Good afternoon, Keith Tebow from FRCmedia. Thank you for joining us as we head into the year of 2022. It's good to catch up with a number of people we haven't spoken to in a while and see what they have planned for the upcoming year, as well as look back a little bit in 2021. I'm pleased to be joined by the Congressman which serves the city of Fall River, Congressman Jake Auchincloss of the 4th Congressional District. Congressman, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
I hope you had a great holiday.
I did. It was nice to spend some time with the family and chase the kiddos around.
Oh, it gets better as they get older. Let me just tell you. I just want to, you've joined us on a number of occasions over the past year, and I really do appreciate it. But I kind of want to first start by looking back in 2021 and then looking ahead to what we can expect in Congress in 2022. Let me first ask you, was your first year as a congressman in the 4th District? In general, is it what you expected in your first year in office?
I think the first month really set the tone for the first year. In the first month, my first Wednesday in office was an insurrection. My second Wednesday was the impeachment of Donald Trump. My third Wednesday, the inauguration of Joe Biden. And then the fourth Wednesday, we got to work on the American Rescue Plan, which sent money to the states and cities throughout the country to get shots in arms, to get kids back to school, and to get Americans back to work. Those first 4 weeks really have set the tenor for the 11 months that followed, because really we've been doing three big things this first year. One, we have been working to put the pandemic behind us, and that remains a key priority for me. I know that with Omicron spreading rapidly, Americans are feeling exhausted. My constituents are feeling exhausted. My family and I are feeling exhausted by a second winter of COVID, and yet it's different this time around. If you're vaccinated, Omicron is going to be a cold. If you're unvaccinated, Omicron can mean serious illness. We have got to protect our healthcare system and our hospitals from surges and from overcapacity. But this does not need to be life-altering or massively disruptive. We can get to the other side of this. And I'm confident that 2022 is going to be the year we put the pandemic in the rearview mirror. We have got to put a strong economy ahead of us. In this first year of the Biden administration, we've created 6 million jobs. That's historic, unprecedented. However, we know that there are 5 million unfilled positions right now throughout the economy. It's a huge difference from the Great Recession, which I graduated into out of college, where the big problem was people weren't hiring and it was hard to get a job and demand was suppressed. Not this time. This time, demand is surging, but supply is suppressed. It's hard to get people back into the workforce. A lot of that has been due to people retiring a little bit early. The data suggests that a big chunk of this has been people in their 50s and 60s leaving the workforce a little bit earlier than they might otherwise have based on pandemic disruptions. That means that it's an historic opportunity for college graduates and for millennials to find new jobs and to find interesting work and to earn a good paycheck with their new bargaining power. So it's disruptive. It is frustrating for small business owners. It is also an opportunity for people who are looking for new lines of work or to reinvent their careers. So those first two things, putting the pandemic behind us, putting a strong economy ahead of us, remain critical priorities. And then the third, and really, frankly, number one on the list, is protecting the integrity of our democracy. As I said, my first Wednesday was the insurrection. Second Wednesday was the impeachment. And unfortunately, that has stayed with us for this full first year in Congress. January 6th is not in the history books. It's current events. And we need to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the Protecting Our Democracy Act to ensure that we have free and fair elections and to guarantee the separation of powers and checks and balances in Washington, D.C., to heal our democracy and to steal it ahead of what's going to be a raucous 2024 presidential election cycle. So we've got our work cut out of us. We've made big strides, and I'm confident that in 2022, we're going to see continued results from Democrats in Congress.
Yeah, I know. One of the last big bills that was passed in the House, and it looks like it's not going to go much further in the Senate, is the Build Back Better bill that President Biden has been pushing. Do you foresee that bits and pieces of this come out this past year so some of those initiatives can get passed on an individual basis?
Yeah, and this is par for the course for Congress. Congress is not an institution that's designed to take one shot on goal and get everything all at once. This is an institution that is meant to negotiate, debate, wrangle. Just to give us some context, the Infrastructure Act we passed this fall, that was bipartisan infrastructure bill that will send $9 billion to Massachusetts for clean water, fixing roads and bridges, expanding high-speed internet, really historic investments in the Commonwealth. That started in the House in one version called the Invest Act. It went to the Senate. It got changed. The White House negotiated with some senators. They altered it some more. They sent it back to the House. This is how Congress and the administration are meant to work. You volley policy back and forth. It gets better. It gets tighter, and then you sign it into law. We're still in those stages with Build Back Better. Started in the House in one version, changed in the Senate, stalling out in the Senate now. But in 2022, I know that key principals from all chambers and the White House are willing to work together to craft legislation that we can pass. And there's really going to be three key areas for this. One is lowering healthcare costs, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, capping the price of insulin, making hearing aids more affordable for seniors. Number two is Social Security for kids, making childcare and early education universal and affordable. And those two things together, for an average family of four, would give $7,400 per year in tax cuts and savings and cost of living. $7,400 worth of savings and tax cuts from those two initiatives together. That is transformative for working and middle-class families who, frankly, over the last half century, have seen their relative purchasing power decline compared to the top 10% in this country. And then the final element of Build Back Better is climate action. We have got to make big, bold investments in a clean energy economy. And that's going to be profoundly important for Massachusetts and for southeastern Massachusetts as well. The offshore wind industry is booming now with contracts for Vineyard Wind and Mayflower Wind, and a lot of good jobs coming to southeastern Massachusetts because of that. We've got to double down on that momentum at the federal level.
Yeah, let me ask you, people in Fall River who may be seeing this, may know of your work, some of your work over the past year, but can you sort of encapsulate the work you've done this year that would benefit specifically? I mean, I know there's some nuances here and some of the details may not be in the forefront of your mind, but some specifics that we can point to that could impact here in Fall River specifically.
Absolutely. So I'll give two examples. One is working with my colleagues in the House, we sent about $150 million worth of tax cuts to families in the Massachusetts 4th Congressional District. So directly working to lower taxes for working and middle-class families here in the Massachusetts 4th. And then number two is the American Rescue Plan, which we passed in late winter, sent money to cities and towns as well as the Commonwealth for them to respond to the pandemic and shore up their finances. And in Fall River, I was recently with Mayor Coogan as he announced that they were going to be spending some of that money on community development and tourism, on expanding public safety initiatives, and probably most impactfully in the long run, on shoring up their water infrastructure. So here in Fall River, we've seen the direct impact of federal investments from the American Rescue Plan in 2021 in lowering your water bills and ensuring access to clean water going forward, in improving public safety, and in lowering your taxes.
Yeah. Let me ask you, as we head into 2022, you talked about some of the specifics in the Build Back Better bill that is still to be coming up before both chambers of Congress. Do you expect that to be the dominating theme as we head into the beginning of the year and even, as we head toward the spring, and then, focus will start shifting toward the election later in 2022?
Yeah, these elections always seem to come up too fast, huh? The number one priority needs to be the integrity of our democracy in terms of the work that we're doing in the halls of Congress. President needs to be focused on COVID response. Congress needs to be focused on voting rights. And we do that by passing the Protecting Our Democracy Act and the Freedom to Vote Act in the Senate and abolishing the filibuster to do so, because those two bills together will guarantee access to the ballot box, will get dark money out of politics, will end partisan gerrymandering, and will restore the separation of powers and checks and balances in Washington, D.C. They are really impactful bills that reinforce the promise of our founders that this would be a government of laws, not of men. And We saw, unfortunately, under the Trump administration that our institutions are more fragile than we would like to imagine. They're also resilient, though, and they have survived, but they need to be reinforced. And these two bills reinforce them and strengthen them, and they need to be our priority.
Yeah, even though you don't have any say in terms of the filibuster in the Senate, do you foresee, from what you're hearing, that that could become amended in terms of making changes to that?
I don't have a vote, but I have a say. And indeed, we all have a say. And I would really encourage your listeners who are feeling anxious about the health of our democracy, about what 2024 might bring in terms of the presidential election. That is where all of our efforts should be. We should all be focused on these two bills and on pressuring Senator Schumer and to put a vote on both these bills on the Senate floor on January 6th, the 1-year anniversary of the insurrection, and on really ramping up the pressure to get rid of the filibuster in order to do so. There's great organizations around the country like Protect Our Democracy that are working on a lot of the specific issues within democracy integrity, and people can volunteer for those organizations as well. But we need federal statute first and foremost to protect our Constitution.
Let me ask you, after 1 year in office, has there been any frustration at all on your part in terms of getting things done? Everyone gets elected, they get in office, they want to forge straight ahead, even though, you're low end of the totem pole there in the House. Was there any frustration at all in terms of how things work in Congress, and any frustrations you've seen in terms of moving some of your priorities forward in that first year?
I think frustration with the pace of legislation is natural. I was a city councilor for 5 years before coming to Congress. And at the local level, things can move more slowly than you want as well. It's about consensus building. It's about crafting a coalition of people who may not see every issue the same way. That is the work of the legislature, whether at the federal, state, or local level. And I would say that, although of course I'm frustrated about healthcare policy that I might want to see passed, environmental policy that I want to see passed, and of course, voting rights policy that I want to see passed. We have to recognize that Congress is not meant to be a lightning quick institution. It's meant to be a stable and just institution that represents a very diverse, very big country with a multitude of interests and perspectives. And you've got to get everyone together talking to one another. And that's really, more than any specific piece of policy, what my focus is in Washington is, how do we make this institution work better, more attuned to the founders' intent, more reflective of America's incredible demographic and political diversity, and how do we, when possible and when and as necessary, cross the aisle and work with people of good faith on either side of an issue. Right out of the gate, after January 6th, I announced I wasn't going to be working with Republicans who voted to decertify the election results. I just don't think I can represent the district's values or frankly, my own values by co-sponsoring legislation with a Republican who doesn't believe in a free and fair election. That's just not going to happen. That still leaves, though, about 100 Republicans who did the right thing and with whom I'm willing to have a good faith debate on any number of issues, because that's how we make this institution work better.
Yeah. Let me ask you finally, as we head into 2022, the makeup of your district has changed a little bit. You now represent the entire city of Fall River, where up until even including this year, it's still represented by both yourself and Congressman Bill Keating out in the 9th Congressional District. How do you view your representation of Fall River as you head into 2022 and you start thinking about re-election later this year?
I'm excited to be representing the full city of Fall River if I'm so fortunate as to be reelected next term. I think it's important that Fall River be united in one congressional district, and in the 4th, it'll be the biggest city in this congressional district. It'll really be the flagship. And I think that's good, frankly, regardless of who the representative is for the Massachusetts 4th. That's appropriate and proper for Fall River to have that type of stature within its congressional district. And I'm just looking forward to really deepening the already very strong relationships I have with Mayor Coogan, with Representative Sylvia, Representative Fiola, Representative Schmid, Senator Rodericks. This is a terrific state and local delegation, and we have forged really tight working relationship over the last year. And I know we're all committed to continuing to work close together, because that's how Fall River wins, is when nonprofits, business, local, state, federal are all rowing on the same boat in the same direction. And right now, that's really what's happening.
All right, Congressman Jake Auchincloss, as always, I do appreciate your time. Happy New Year, and I'm sure we'll be keeping in touch throughout 2022 as more of these bills come forward. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
All right. And thank you for joining us here on FRC Media. I'm Keith Tebow. Have a great day.